For people that don't know, Doug, about what you do at North East Young Dads and Lads, this is an amazing project. And I remember listening to Lisa chatting to you about it a few years back, and I thought it was incredible. But for people that don't know, just talk us through what it is you do and how you came to be.
Thanks. I can just say Lisa was a great champion of ours and sadly missed.
Yeah, we missed her too.
As a service, so we're a service that works with young dads, and young dad is defined as under 25, and we work with dads to be in whoever identifies as a father figure within the child's life as well.
That's interesting.
So that we can have quite diverse families that come to us, but we'll support those young parents in their journey, either in fatherhood or towards fatherhood. So we were established in 2017 in Gateshead. We were kind of born out of a young women's project. There's a project in Gateshead called the Young Women's Outreach Project, who are working with some young mums. And there had been previously some work done with young dads in Gateshead, but the funding had ended for that and hadn't been for a little while. So they identified there was a need to look at supporting dads within the local area. So
Absolutely.
They managed to get a little bit of funding. That was back in 20
way back.
Can't remember. Before, way back in time.
Yeah.
But it was only 10 hours, and Kevin Studley, who is the CEO of the organisation now, came in to do 10 hours just to go and meet with some of these young men, young dads, and find out what they wanted, what would help them, what kind of support they would need. So that kind of started there. And then in 2017, as we progressed and the service became bigger, we became an independent charity ourselves.
Brilliant.
So it became a charity, and we've kind of grown exponentially since then. So now, within 5 years, we cover the northeast region. So
That's
we
phenomenal growth.
we go from Northumberland down to County Durham and Middlesbrough and everywhere in between, because there wasn't a service specifically supporting young dads in those areas, and because of the work that we were doing, we were asked to work into those areas to support those young men. So a lot of our work is about supporting those young men on the fatherhood journey.
And it's not an easy journey, and there are so many misconceptions around young dads and so many myths and a lot of generalisations, and that's difficult. And Robert, you used the service then. How old were you when you came to the service?
I think I was 18, 19-year-old at the time.
I mean, that's young. So was it a big shock for you?
Yeah, it was. It was a mix of emotions, really. It was like I was excited, I was scared,
terrifying.
I didn't know what to do at the time. I was in college. I had a plan on what I wanted to do
with your life.
Yeah, and then as things came up, and we had to naturally tell my parents and her parents. I wasn't so nervous about telling my parents, but her parents, yes. My course just kind of changed, and I felt like I just kind of had to get a job, some income. I had the feeling of just needing to support my family.
And I think as a young person, you've got so much going on in your life, and it's easy for these things to happen. It doesn't take very long for it to happen, and it's easy to be judged as well. And that's unfair because, a lot of people are at it and lots of people get caught at it, and we shouldn't judge. And if you get the right path and you've got the right help, that's amazing in going forward. And when you first went then to meet people from the organisation, what was that like?
It was different because I met up with people who were in the same boat.
Yeah.
But it was with young men who I don't think I would have ever have met in any other circumstance.
Different types of people.
Yeah. Different backgrounds, things like that. But even today, I'm still friends with them today as well. So like,
you have more in common than not.
Yeah.
And is that idea that when you've got something in common like that, like becoming young dads, that actually there's a lot of support and solace from chatting to other people who absolutely understand what you're going through because they're going through it themselves.
Yeah, because everyone's got different lived experiences. It's certainly a good, I guess, icebreaker to talk about those. And then it ventured into then talking about everyday life things, which can turn into building relationships and friendships. And then in a way at least I felt this way, we felt supported by each other, so it worked out really well.
Because I think sometimes, and I don't know if there's a generalisation or not, Doug, but sometimes when a young person is potentially going to be a mum or a dad, particularly a mum, there's the shock, but then quite often there will be lots of support around a mum, but very often the dads don't get the support, do they?
That's quite true, yes. And what we find is that young fatherhood status isn't celebrated. It's generally
sort of demonised.
Looked, because there's a common stereotype that I have to say, with the over 200 young men that I've worked with, the time I've been with North East Young Dads and Lads, I haven't met that stereotype yet.
That's interesting. And how long have you been there for, Doug?
I've been there since 2017, and I've worked with young men and boys now for over 25 years in the voluntary sector.
Yeah.
And I still haven't met that stereotype yet. So it's really interesting. It's not celebrated, and it's not sort of looked as sometimes something that is a real positive in that young man and that young family's life as well.
Yeah.
There is difficulties, there is a lot of challenges that come with being young and going to be a parent, but that doesn't stop someone being a good parent. It just sometimes makes it a little bit harder, but that's why we are there as a service, to try and support those young men to be the best that they can.
Yeah, and you need help in going about how to prepare. And gosh, I think I'd been with my husband 10 months and I was 23/nearly 24. And it was a big surprise. And everybody was like, oh, and my dad was I was very lucky. My dad was like, well, this is the most wonderful news ever. And I was like, oh, thank goodness for that. That's what sometimes you need, that sense of positivity. And did you get that sense of positivity then, Robert, when you went to Young Lads and Dads?
Yeah, to be honest, because previously I worked closely with, for quite some time, young carers in Gateshead, and I met up with a friend of mine, or someone who I'd worked with for a very long time, and told him about my current situation.
Yeah.
Which then led on to being kind of referred into Northeastern Dads and Lads. And the initial impact that it came onto me was I didn't really have to do anything, which was great. I had a lot of the support just kind of come to me, and whether that was a phone call or a text, or what do you fancy doing for a bit, just to talk about something, whether that's get a coffee or do something that we like to do, and then that's when it turned from one-to-one stuff to then meeting these other young men. So it felt quite natural going through that process, but I certainly felt like I've benefited from that, because I went into it before I'd met Kevin and Doug. I went into it quite upset and angry.
Yeah. Where did the anger come from?
I think with being so young,
it
was the expectation of, even though it's at the time the relationship broke down, I think I had an illusion that I would still be able to see my daughter every single day, when realistically that can't happen, with routines and things like that.
Yeah.
But the initial reaction to it was like, how am I going to do this?
And how am I going to cope?
Yeah. And then after all that, that's when a lot of other stuff came into play to try and sort arrangements and things like that.
And that's where you need the help, because it's about practical help, isn't it really, Doug? The practical things that you help the lads with.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of practical, emotional support and help that we do around about parenting skills, because we find that a lot of the young men were kind of judged on their parent skills without someone actually supporting them to understand their parent skills, and sometimes the young men were kind of risk assessed rather than supported. So that's where we look at developing the parenting skills for young men. Now we have our digital platform as well, our DigiDAD online e-learning platform, where we have videos on there now, because we were doing it. I do remember kind of pre-COVID, I would go out with my virtual baby, my pack of nappies and my jar of Nutella. Always used to freak them out when I licked the Nutella on the nappy. You go, no, please don't do that. But it was showing them some of the practical skills, and
which you need those.
And there was the ones that were commonly coming up for dads with newborns was ones like holding the baby for the first time. I remember being an older dad, and my baby being put in my arm. I got 2 lovely boys now, teenage boys, but I still remember holding them for the first time and being absolutely petrified, thinking I was holding this glass thing that was going to break any moment. So there's things like like holding the baby for the first time, giving them tips on how to do that. We've done that on videos, digital format, so the young men can go and watch it. Bathing the baby, safe sleeping, supporting mum breastfeeding or bottle feeding. So looking at making sure that the young men are equipped with these skills and these knowledge, so then they can go and say, actually, I can do this and I want to do that. And on that platform we have lots of other ones. We have our 6 to 12 month program, which looks at child development. We've just released our first aid course, so we do face-to-face perinatal first aid courses for the young men, so they do baby first aid, so they've got that, so they understand how to make sure the baby's safe and what to do. But actually Robert was part of making the videos. We've created 6 videos for perinatal first aid on our DigiDAD, so anybody can go on our DigiDAD website and have a look at them. And there's lots of videos that have been made by young dads talking about their experience of being a dad and being involved with services, because that's where young people now go for their information if it's done digitally, and they can access it anytime, as well as that one-to-one support, the group support we do. We go out cycling, we've got bikes that the young men can come along, great for mental health and well-being.
100%.
We'll have the trailers so they can bring their children along for a cycle. We do family days, which is lovely. And actually we gift bikes to young men so they can use them one young man was having to get 2 buses to get to work, which was taking about an hour. It was half an hour on a bike, so we gave him a bike to get to work.
And you're giving him more time with his family
yeah,
then.
and just how that made him feel about himself and much more confident and positive. That's what it's about, isn't it? It's about making the best for those young men and, you know, trying to support them within the journey. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be really difficult for them if they're not having contact with their children, so we support them through that as well.
And as Doug just said there, Robert, you have taken part in these videos, and this is a really lovely circular story because you have ended up from using the service to now working for the service. So how did that feel and how did that come about?
Well, ever since I met Kev, to be honest, I've always wondered how he got into that kind of work. And while I was working full time under a completely different profession, I would, attend these weekly groups and then eventually volunteer. And, again, thanks to Needle, they've been able to give me the opportunity to earn some qualifications and training at the same time.
Fantastic. So you're really empowering people. Yeah. It's not just about giving people a fish, it's about giving them the fishing rod.
Yeah, I have to say, we want to be an asset-based service. At the moment, out of the 7 staff that we have, 4 of them are young dads who came into the service who are now employed by the service and are the experts by experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you got training and now you do full time.
Yeah.
So just tell us about what you do on a day-to-day. What is your job with North East Dads and Lads?
Yeah, so initially I was, naturally shadowing the likes of Doug, or I've got another colleague, Andy, who covers Middlesbrough, to meet up with these young men, whether it was at their homes or in a different place where they felt more comfortable. That could be to grab a coffee and have a chat at the same time. So it went from that to where now I've got kind of my own caseload. I'm able to contact these young dads directly, whether that's texts or phone calls, and just I feel like I can just kind of plan my own weeks and days out around them. Like you said before, it feels like it's come around full circle. It does. I think that lived experience that I've had and a lot of the things that I've learned from helps with that.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought with me being quite young, and this isn't against you or Kev, but with me being quite young, I always thought that my interaction with these young men would take a lot longer because I wondered if they would look at me in a different light.
Because you're so young.
Yeah. But in reality, it's actually been the other way around. We've connected and built relationships. Like I said before, I was in a different profession for like 7 years, but during that time I would volunteer, and I've always felt like, especially now, it's way more rewarding than ever.
And what about being a dad now? Do you enjoy being a dad?
Yeah, I enjoy being a dad. It's changed a lot over the last 8 years. My daughter, she's 9.
It flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, and even the relationship with her mom is great. We're very amicable. We can talk about just about anything. And I think with having that sort of experience, I would love for that to sort of be carried over and the work that I do in practice, and that I can kind of relay that onto other young men.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of young men, again, like I was at the start, are quite angry and upset about certain situations, and they don't really know what to do. There's a lot going on at the same time. It could be work related or just about anything else. And I just want to kind of show that it is possible to get back into that position. And it's ultimately the best thing to do for their child as well.
Absolutely. And for ourselves, if we can have amicable relationships with people and glimpse arguments from the other side, and then the better dads you become, the better the relationship's going to be anyway. That's just a win-win for everybody. So all of this amazing work going on, the digital platform, rekindling relationships in terms of keeping things amicable. You've actually done a play as well. So tell us about that, Doug, because this sounds fantastic. So the play was called Father Unknown.
Yes, and again, Robert's been really involved in this. It came from some work that we're doing, and actually it was a conversation with 2 young men were having with a couple of the workers. And we had been working with Newcastle University as well, and that was around our beekeeping project and some of the work we'd done with the Baltic Contemporary Arts Centre on an equal play exhibition. And a couple of the staff members were talking, and one of the young men says, you should make a comic book or a story out of my life. And that went, that sounds quite interesting. It was kind of developed from there to thinking, how can we tell the story? Because we do tell these stories, by like coming on here and talking on the radio within our digital platform. But look, how can we do it differently that might engage different people, get people who haven't thought about what are some of the issues for young parents to look at this. So the kind of Father Unknown, and the title comes from because when a dad's not on the birth certificate, it just has Father Unknown on it.
Yes, yeah,
when
of course.
The father does know who he is and he does know who his child is, but he's unknown on the birth certificate. So that was where the title came from.
Yeah.
And we worked with Jonah York, who worked for us for a little while, who who has done a lot of theatre before in TV, so he was looking at writing a script to do that. But that was done in conjunction with ourselves as well and some of the young dads, and Robert was involved in that script writing sessions, looking at what we wanted to say, what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Robert knows way more about this than I do. I was just crying at them every time the performance was on, because there was 3 performances.
Yeah.
At the Gala Theatre and 2 at the Northern Stage, and I cried at everyone.
Moving?
Yeah, absolutely moving. Even though I knew the story, just the way it was told was very different to where I've seen it before. For me, it was just heartwarmingly moving, but so real as well.
That's interesting, Robert. That must elicit some kind of response from you. It must be lovely to hear that Doug felt like that when you were a part of the script writing. What was that like to be part of it?
Yeah, it was interesting. It took over a year and a half to develop, and part of that process was we got some young dads who had that lived experience volunteer to talk about certain key moments in their lives. It could be things from finding out that they were going to be a dad at 16, still in school, all the way through certain circumstances within families and how it's made them feel and all those things. So we got a bunch of young dads, and then what we did was we kind of pulled out key points from each of them and turned it into just one personification of a theatrical play where that story just presented itself in its fullest from beginning to end. But it was interesting because it was the fact that it was from all those young men's lives shown through just one performance. Like you said, Doug, it's got a good mix of lighthearted comedy.
I bet it has.
And
some lovely humour.
And then it really hits those key points where you're like, wow, you never really think of it that way.
Yeah.
And not to mention the Gala Theatre and the 2 shows that we had at Newcastle were completely fully booked as well.
Amazing.
Which is, I think, kind of unheard of for theatrical plays.
That's fantastic news.
Yeah, I mean, the process was dead fun.
Did you act in it as well?
No, there was a point where Jonah mentioned that, actually, and I've always loved the idea of, same with the DigiDAD stuff, I've always loved doing like the voice acting. But after seeing the auditions for the people coming in to act that play, I was like, wow, they can remember these lines like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I just don't think I could even do that, to be honest, but it would have been fun.
Well, that might be the next thing. You've gone full circle. You've been a wonderful young dad. Now you're helping other people be great young dads. Now you're working there. It'll be theatre next. So if people want to find out more, Doug, about all that you do and DigiDAD, the platform, everything, where can they go to?
Well, actually, they can easily just search us up online. It's just North East Young Dads and Lads.
Yeah.
Or our DigiDAD, which is DigiDAD North East Young Dads. On our website, we have a YouTube channel as well. Yeah, anybody that would like to know more information, or if there's some young dads out there that think actually this might be a service that can help me, they can reach out to us and contact us through that way as well.
Brilliant. Best thing about being a dad for you, Doug?
Watching my 2 sons grow into the men that they're going to be, because they are absolutely amazing.
Lovely people. And what about you, Robert? The best thing about being a dad?
Building that bond, that relationship, where even now I don't see my daughter every single day, but every time that time comes around, picking her up from school, for example, she's always running out and kind of like wanting to hug and stuff like that. So it's building that bond, building that relationship, and just making memories. So
it's a lovely thing until when she's a teenager and she's not tidying her room and you yell at them. But we get over that as well.
Yeah.
It's been so nice chatting to you, Robert and Doug. Thank you so much for coming into BBC Radio Newcastle.
Thank you.